Hello, Ben. Welcome to Automate All the Things. So excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Aaron. I'm
All
excited to be
right.
here.
Well, let's just gonna say our usual quick hello in the chat. If you are new here to Automate All the Things, we welcome guests to learn something new about no code every single week. Today we're here with Ben Johnson from Retool. We've got Colleen in the chat. Make sure if this is your first time joining to say a little hello in the chat. Would love to learn what use cases you have if you've used Retool before. Hey, Kevin, welcome to Automate All the Things. Excited to have you. Yeah, let us know. But Ben, for folks who are maybe unfamiliar with you, obviously, but also with Retool, how about we start with a quick intro into what you are, I guess, and what Retool is.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. So I'm a sales engineer at Retool, and I've been here for about 4 months. Before this, I was a back-end engineer, and that's actually how I found Retool. I was building a lot of front ends and realized I could do it faster
Mm,
through Retool, and that led me here. Um, But yeah, Retool is a software platform for building internal tools. So we created it because, or the founders created it because we realized most internal tools are built using the same
right.
visual building blocks. And so we abstracted those visual building blocks and um, allowed people to build really cool software easily and
So
fast.
if I understand it correctly, you were a back engineer who didn't like front end and then joined a company that lets you abstract the front end and create an easy back end. Is that like a good summary of your path to where you are today and kind of a trope almost as well?
Yeah, it's definitely a theme. And I think in the last 4 months, I've built more software than I've built in the last, 3 or 4 years, just because how fast
Right,
Retool lets
right.
you build.
And it's interesting that you kind of went from engineer to like more of the kind of client facing and the sales side almost. So I'm curious maybe to dig in before we like jump into the tool. Like why not just continue being a software engineer? It feels like a weird, not a it's an interesting path, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it was a lot about the
Hmm.
product, and I just believe in the value of our product, and I've seen how powerful it can be for companies. Even personally, I've been able to build out, fun applications I've wanted to build for years, and so I enjoy evangelizing it. I enjoy talking to customers and helping people understand the power of Retool. So, yeah, I'm really enjoying the role, really enjoying sales, and um,
Yeah,
so far so good. Looking forward to the next four
absolutely.
months.
So I would love to know in the chat if folks have some use cases where they think like, oh, I have this like either a workflow or something internal to a company that you're like, oh, how could we build an app for that? Right? Something with a front end that speaks to a back end. Maybe it's, back end you already have, right? Whether an Airtable or some kind of database that you have, or just something that you have in mind that you like to build. But as folks are writing that out, Ben, what is our use case, and maybe what are some common use cases for Retool?
Yeah, sure thing. Well, I see Kevin says he's an HR guy, which I love to see because we actually had a customer that we just worked with who was building a lot of use cases for
Mm,
their HR team. So really any internal tool in your business. So a lot of companies you end up purchasing a SaaS product for your HR team or purchasing it for your ops team, and Retool allows you to just build those from scratch really easily and really fast. So like a use case that I thought might be fun today is expense reports. For your finance team, you might need to submit expense reports and validate information that people submit, and that's something we can build in
mhm.
less than an hour. So I thought that would be a fun place to
Fantastic.
start.
Yeah. So pretty much everything is an app, right? So we can pretty much build anything. I thought it'd be cool to do expense because we did that with Glide a couple weeks ago. So I think it's interesting to see how the same tool can approach the same problem in different ways, and we can build a bunch of really cool stuff. So hey Penny, welcome back. Um, yeah, go ahead and drop your use cases just like Kevin. Would love to hear more about what folks want to build. But with that said, let's go ahead and drop into my browser here. Boom. Give me a thumbs up, Ben. You can see my browser. All good. Fantastic. Um,
Yep.
cool. Okay, well, I'm in Retool. Maybe we start with, at the high level, what are the kind of building blocks that you mentioned? And what is like every app I feel like has different wording as to what they call different things. So kind of give us the basics of it. What are we building an app, a page? Like how does it work?
Yeah, sure thing. So The three concepts to understand when you're coming into Retool are components. And components are the visual building blocks of your
Hmm.
application that we talked about. It might be a form, it might be a table, it might be a text input. Any visual building block, that's a component. Queries is the
Right.
second concept, and queries are how you connect to your data store. And a query could be, Kevin, I see you have a spreadsheet somewhere. It sounds like that's storing your employee records, so that could be a data store. Your
Hmm.
Excel or Airtable, that could be another data store, or maybe a database like
Right.
Postgres. So queries pull those into the application. And the third concept to understand is
Right.
application state. So once you pull data from your data store into the application, it lives in the application state. And that's where you can start to manipulate
Got
it in
it.
the
And so
components.
maybe a step before that, like, how are we building an app today? Right? Is that kind of the, the unifying principle? So we're going to build an app that has those three things. So our starting point should be an app. So I'm going to call this, what is like is an app going to have multiple pages, or are we going to build multiple apps?
One app
Okay.
per
So
page.
what is the first app that you would build in an expense workflow, if you will?
Yeah, probably the app to submit
Okay.
the expense report. So,
So just submit expense.
yep,
Yeah, let's create that. So now we're creating an app that allows people to submit expenses. And there's a lot here. So walk me through. I think you mentioned those. You have components here. Then we had queries here on the bottom. Yeah, talk me through what I'm seeing here.
that's exactly right. So components on the right, queries in the bottom, and in the center you have the
Okay.
canvas. And the three buttons that are very handy in the center of your screen next to the zoom, exactly. Those are the
Okay.
panels, and you can go and hide those, and
Got
that's
it.
pretty handy.
So this
Uh,
is my app. This is
and
my canvas. These are my components that I can kind of drag and drop. These are my queries that let me pull information. And then this is my state. So state and my explorer, which are kind of the structure of this page. Is that so? Like I'm a Webflow person, and so this is like the HTML. This would kind of be the CSS or the pieces, and this would be kind of my middleware, if you will, that allows me to talk to other DBs.
Aaron, are you sure you've never used
No,
Retool before?
I spent a lot of times looking at applications that look very much like this, and they not I don't mean that in a bad way. They all look similar, if you will, but the logic is the same. The implementation is very different, and the implementation's where there's a difference.
I love it. No, I mean, that's exactly what we're going for. We want to make
Hmm.
it intuitive. And so I just love that you've been able to pick it up so fast. So, um, absolutely right. And maybe the first thing we want to do is, I think this app was default created with a table. Let's go ahead and delete that table, which, yep, right click delete. And let's drag a form onto the canvas.
I'm not a designer. It's good. Thank you for putting guardrails in here. Right. Hey, grilled cheese dude, welcome. Okay, so I've put a form in, and then I have this like inspect element. So this is the data I need to kind of fill in for this form. So walk us through it, especially that I know that most folks are not necessarily developers.
Yeah, sure thing. So, you can populate the form with some initial data if we want to pull it from somewhere. Today, we're actually
Okay.
not going to do that. One thing is let's change the title of the form. So right there,
Submit expense.
there we go. And so there we go. So that's the title. In the form itself, there are a lot of configuration options. Let's just go ahead and start building.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the fastest way to pick. So let's actually drag a component into our form. So if you go to
So back
create,
to components, or should
uh,
I be here in, oh, create here? Okay, got it, got it.
absolutely, yep. And then let's drag a. I think we'll start with the text input.
So what are we like? What are the elements we're going to be adding here? So I've just added a text input and move this to the left.
Mhm.
And what were you thinking that input would be?
Maybe a name. So for an expense report, maybe you want to submit the name of
Okay, and
the
that would be under
employee.
so
And
employee name, something like that. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. There you go. Let me make this a little larger. Boom. Cool. So we've got our first one. Are we adding more? What should we just add a bunch of a few inputs here? Yeah.
let's add a few inputs.
Text. What's the next one? Is it a text input? Is it a different input?
How about we
Okay.
do email?
And I imagine specifying the fact that it's an email is not in the type of input. It's always going to be text, and then we could specify here what we kind of want to. Did I put it in the
Actually, in
wrong
this
place?
case,
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, there we go.
my mistake. So if you go to create, you can actually drag an
Oh, okay.
email. If you search for,
Okay, it's a
there's a
type of component. Got it. Got it. Got it. So let's
Mhm,
delete that
mhm.
one. Boom. Then delete. Where's my delete? Is it right here? Nice. It's good. You can
Yep.
see someone like learning the tool live, which is useful, right? Okay, email input. What else are we putting in here?
How about a date?
Is that that's also a type of input? Got it. Awesome. Okay. So far, we're for folks maybe who are familiar with Airtable. Here, we're actually starting with the form, not connected to any kind of backend. There's no structure here yet. We're just building out the form. But I imagine if we had a table, we can also just kind of connect. We'll do that in a moment. But here, we're just starting with the form. Anything else we want to add here?
Maybe a description, and that
Okay,
might be
and that would
about
be
it.
text input. Okay,
Text
like
input.
let's do. Right, let me change the label here. Is there something wrong with the audio? Is it just delayed? So let me know, folks, in the chat, or if it's just not good. Yeah, out of sync. How out of sync are we talking? Like super out of sync, or just a little bit? Because if it's a little bit, we'll probably live with it, and I'll fix that between streams. Okay, so here we want to call this label. We're going to call this date of expense, date purchase, date of purchase, just date. And then
There we go.
description. And how do we want to do like a large? Can we do a larger input for description?
We could, and that would be a different type of input. We do a multi-line text.
Text area.
A text
Okay, let's do
area.
that. That makes sense.
Oh,
Would that be in? That would just be separate like this. Okay, here we go. Got it. Let's delete that. Boom. Let's call this description. Okay. All right. So we've got our form. Anything else we got to do here?
the one most important part, I think, of the expense report would be currency.
Oh, the amount. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're right. Okay, cool. You're totally right. Oh, weird. So is Ben delayed? Usually sometimes Aron seems to be talking over Ben. Also sound and audio not together. Okay, let me try something. Let me try something here. 1 second, folks. Let me try to fix this live on the stream, which is always what we want to do. 1 second. This is not your fault, Ben. This is all my fault. Okay. I'm trying something that might fix it. Let me know if it gets better or if it doesn't change. Thanks, Colleen. Cool. Okay. So we've created our form. We have our currency amount. Is there anything we need to modify in these different fields, if you will, or inputs before we kind of consider this done?
There is one thing, but let's come back to it because it's going to make a little bit more sense after we've created our data store.
This would be, sorry, just gonna, how do I label this currency? So this is amount. There we go. Whoops.
Yep.
Cool. Okay. So we have this. I guess we can't submit to anything because we have nowhere to submit to.
That's exactly right. So let's tackle that next, and let's create a data store. So maybe I'd open up a different tab to do this, so we still keep the tab open. And it's going to be Ben Johnson.
Yep, cool.
Yep, there you go. And if you go to resources at the very top, and then you see the Retool database, this is actually a database that we host. So you don't even need to have your own database. You can just build everything within Retool. Go ahead and click View.
This one right here, View.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and so we actually already have an expenses table. If you
Right.
see at the top. And so we can probably get away with just using the existing table, but I'll just point out that the column names here are going to be important. So the column name is named with a string that's formatted as such, and we're going to take those and we're going to go back over to the form because basically when we submit the form, we need to tell the form that, hey, this field corresponds to this
Right.
column and this field corresponds to this column. So I'll show
Yeah. So
you
this
how
is
to.
something we already, this it wouldn't be built out in someone, but we kind of did this before. But essentially, this is just similarly, we're building the database, right? And we can just add new fields. If this is a test field, I select a type, right? Date plus time, foreign key, whatever it is. And I'm able to create this database in Retool. So I don't need um, an external database. So I can just build it in Retool. And what we're going to do now is try to connect such that when we submit this form, it creates a new record in our expenses table in our Retool database.
Yep, that's
Cool.
exactly right. Um,
Cool. So
and just looping back to Kevin, if
yeah,
you're still in the chat, for the HR app you're talking about, where you have an Excel sheet that's organizing all your information, you can continue using that Excel sheet, or you can migrate that to a database
got
in
it.
Retool. Um,
Um,
so
okay, cool. So let's go ahead and um, connect this form to the Retool DB.
Yep. So next thing to do is if you click the top input, employee name, yep, and then over in the
Mm-hmm.
inspector, if we scroll down, there's a there's a field called form data key. It's in the advanced tab. Scroll
There
up
we
a
go.
little bit,
Form data.
and that is what tells our form that, hey, this corresponds to this table or this column. So we're actually going to title this name because that's the name of our
So we're
column.
going to map this one, employee name, to name right here. But how do we say that this is the database it's connected to? Will it just understand?
We'll do
Okay.
that in a second, but that's a
Okay.
great
So we're just
question.
calling this name. We're saying this is the field to which you're going to map whatever's in this input, and then we're going to connect the whole form to the database. Okay, got it.
Absolutely, you got it. So then do the same thing for email. I think email is called email.
So I'm on email. So yeah, email one, and so I want to call this email. Just want to make sure we're email.
Mm-hmm.
Great. We've had a lot of mistakes where I was not capitalizing correctly. Next, we've got date right here. Awesome. Amount, also amount. Fantastic. So here we're going to go to advanced amount. There we go. Cool, cool, cool. And then description in Retool is description as well. Cool. Thank you for making that easy for me. Fantastic. Cool. Okay, so we've got description. So now we've mapped each input to the corresponding field in our Retool database. How do we connect form to the database?
That's a great question. So this, if you click on the form, and then if we go over to the
Mm-hmm.
inspector on the right, you see the section called event
Event
handlers.
handlers.
It's up at the
Event handler right
top.
here. Yeah.
Event handlers are how you're going to connect that button to an action. So we want that button to submit, and so we're going to use an event handler. Now, event handler is going to trigger a query, so we actually need to write
Oh,
a
okay.
query to update our database. So that's going to be in the query editor at the bottom of the
Okay.
screen.
So this, we're going to first create the event, the query to say, okay, when this submits, go ahead and create that record in our DB, and then we're going to associate that query to this kind of interaction, if you will. So, okay, are we gonna be writing some SQL or SQL here? I haven't done that in 10 years. So
We actually can get away
okay,
without
great.
writing any SQL.
Good.
So if you click the resource, we are going to have to change that
Oh, here?
resource within the query editor. at the bottom, there's a section called resource, and it's currently set to
One
onboarding
second here.
VB.
Okay, here, resource. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you scroll up all the way to the top, select Retool database.
Retool. Retool
Yeah.
database right here. Okay.
Yep. And then we're actually gonna, to your point, select GUI mode instead of
Okay, got
SQL
it.
mode.
Perfect. Thank you.
There we
So
go.
we're not gonna write the
Yeah.
SQL. We're just gonna go. This is the no code
Nope.
version. This is the I don't write code version. Okay, so we're
Yep.
gonna go to expenses, action type. We're gonna insert a record, and then okay, so we're mapping then kind of the key value pairs, right? Essentially saying the input from this should be go into this field. So this should be the field.
Mhm.
I'm taking over.
And we can
Ben. I got this.
well, we can actually do it a little bit
Okay.
simpler since we use the form data key. If you click object there, change set, and you click object, do you see what's the grade text? You can actually just reproduce that grade text, form one
Okay.
dot data, uh, between double curlies.
Yeah.
And then, yep. And then can you see how the green, if you click out of there, it'll show you how that's going to
Oh, okay.
evaluate.
So it's essentially saying, okay, so if I write a name, so it's a, Aron Corbett, and then email is aaron@example.com, blah, blah, blah. Let's go and reevaluate. And now it's saying, okay, this is what okay, so form1.data is essentially the JSON of like everything that's in the form mapped to its different fields that we've inputted. Okay, am I saying that right in a technical sense?
Cool. Absolutely. That's okay, cool. Accurate.
Let me know, folks, if the audio issue is better. I think it's just me having Wi-Fi issues. So sorry about that, and I'll try to fix it live on the stream. And again, in the chat, let me know if this is making sense. I know it's a little bit more developer-y, I guess, than we are used to, but I think the building blocks are actually quite the same to any other kind of no-code tool that's out there. So yeah, I'm having tons of fun doing this. So hopefully folks watching do as well. Okay, is it like super out of sync, Colleen? Let me know if it's like super out of sync, because I can't fix the slight sync, but I can maybe fix the super out of sync. Cool. Okay, so now that we have this, do we need to connect this button to this query?
That's right. And to save our work, let's go ahead and click save here first, and then let's just test it by running the query manually. So we're going to click run.
Okay, and then we should go here, and then should I refresh here?
Give it a refresh. There you
go.
Fantastic.
Okay, cool. So we've connected our DB with that form submit. Cool. Okay.
And to your point, we just need to hook up the button now. So if you go back to that event handler, do you see? I think it is already hooked up because it's triggering query one,
so,
which is what we.
Yeah, I guess we should rename this to submit expense. Right.
Yep, and no spaces. So if you just do like camel case forest.
Let's do that, and then here we gotta. How do I connect it now that I've changed the name?
And it, yep. So if you click submit, if you click back into that event handler, and then click query, the query drop down. Exactly.
Okay, and that's it. I don't need to do anything else here. If I close this out.
And actually, don't worry about renaming stuff because everything's going to update. So if you rename a query now, if you rename this submit expense query, then everything's going to update accordingly. You don't need to go.
Got it. So how could I like test this out in not building mode? Is there a way where I can preview and kind of just go through the app as if I'm like an end user?
Yeah, go ahead and in the top right, there's a button called preview.
Okay, let's see if this works. Bada boom. I know I can have an expense in the future. I'm sure we can put some error handling, like no expenses in the future, but we'll keep that for the end. Let's say, this was for lunch. It was a very expensive lunch. Submit. All queries completed. Um,
And go ahead and check in the database. We'll just see if that got populated. There we
boom.
go.
Fantastic. Okay. Let me try one more thing for the audio. Oh, I don't have any overlapping. I don't have any delays, which is weird. It might just be my Wi-Fi, guys. I'm really sorry about that, but we'll get through it. We'll get through it. Cool. Okay. So we've created our expense submitter. And then Kevin in the chat mentioned, okay, well, how do I, let's say I'm the approver side, right? So everyone's submitting to this database, right? And Kevin was mentioning like, okay, what if I want to see all, maybe all expenses or expenses to be approved, or even create like an approver workflow? I wouldn't be using this, but I would be using something connected to the DB to be able to approve. How would I go ahead and, is that a separate app connected to this database?
Yeah,
Okay.
you got it. And I do have one suggestion
Yeah.
before we go there. Why don't we share this with
Okay.
the chat so people can
Okay.
answer? And the way to do that is if you go back to edit, or if you click share in the top right, and then go to public. We're actually going to make this a public app so anyone can view. Yep, there we go. And then you can just copy that
Okay.
link in the chat.
I trust everyone in the chat, so I'm trusting. I'm gonna trust. So folks, go ahead and submit a few expenses. I'm trusting you all, and I will find whoever is. If someone's being naughty, I'll find them. Um,
And it's actually okay here because the public app is only going to give them. You could open it on your screen in like maybe an incognito
right.
window or something. It doesn't have access to our Retool instance. It only has access
Yeah,
to
that's not
this
what I'm
app.
worried about, Ben.
And
I'm not worried about people messing with the app. I'm worried about other stuff that we'll see. We'll see. I trust everyone. I trust you. Cool. Okay.
um,
So now that folks are submitting, go ahead and take a moment to submit, and we'll have some data points to kind of look at after. Let's go ahead and start. Um, building that second app. So I'm gonna go back into edit app, back into home, I guess, and we're building a new app. Expense
that's right.
approval, I guess.
Yeah.
Create that app. Okay, now I imagine, how should I think about the different like, talk me through what the app canvas will end up looking like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so we have a database with a bunch of expenses that we want to approve. So maybe the best way to visualize those would
Okay.
be a table. So we can keep this table on
Okay.
the canvas. What we want to do is replace the data in the table from this fake data with our actual database. So the way to do that is we're going to need to query our database and retrieve those records. So once again, we'll find ourselves in the query editor. And
so in order to connect this table, oh, so you're saying, okay, we're going to have a little thing on the right here to like show me unimproved or show me expense of this person. So that will be connected to the query. How do I connect this table? I guess that's step one, is connecting this table to that Retool DB that we have in the backend.
yeah, you got it. And the first thing we're going to have to do is pull data from the database into our
Okay.
application. And the way to do it is a query.
So I've got here, I'm pulling this query, and then let's call this pull expenses, right? And then resource is going to be Retool DB. And I want the, am I say GUI mode?
In this case, since we're doing a select, we do have to write some SQL, but it's
I can do it.
It's just a select.
I think I can do it. I can do it. I remember it goes select. Okay, talk me through it. Talk me through it. So I remember it's always like select something from products where, so it's kind of like sentence like. That's what I remember from my SQL days.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And in this case, we'll add in the where clause a little bit later, but let's just do select star from expenses. And let's give ourselves one more thing. We want to order the records in a consistent way. So we're just going to say order by ID.
Order by, it's 2 words. And then ID is like this.
Yep.
Is it ID?
You got
okay,
it.
caps. Yeah. Okay, cool. save and run. So my expectation is I have here.
And it's not, oh,
Okay.
there we go.
You weren't confident there that it wasn't gonna run. Let's make this a little bit larger. Sure. Food description.
Oh, people are buying you gifts, Aaron. Do you see that, Penny?
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm gonna pay for it. Thank you, Penny, for your gift that I will expense on my card. I really appreciate it. Okay, great. We've got our DB. Thank you, everyone, for being nice. I appreciate deeply appreciate that. Okay, so now I think back to Kevin's example. Like, how do I imagine, like, I would want to be like, only show me those that have been unapproved, and then have like a button where I can approve them, or let me search for someone's specific expenses. How would I go about and query this database that we've pulled information into?
Yeah. Let's take the second thing you said and do that first, and then we'll come back to the first part. So we're actually going to filter by, what do you think, name?
Yeah, I think filter by name, and then if possible, like approve, right? Just can I filter only to the ones with unapproved, so they have the X in it?
Yeah. So if you drag a text input onto the canvas, that's how the user is going to enter the name.
Let's make this a tiny bit smaller.
And then I think that's actually a text component rather than a text.
Got it.
I get them confused.
So text, and we want the input, text input like this.
Mm-hmm.
So let's call this. Hey, Roseberry, welcome. Okay, so employee name, so just name, like that, right?
Yep.
Okay, and my goal is that if I write Aron, I only want to see expenses that relate to that person.
Yeah. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to take that query and we're going to filter to the word that's been entered by the user here in the text input. And to do that, it's a simple where clause, as you said, and SQL kind of reads like English.
But I would create a new one. So I'm creating a new.
Let's keep it on this query. We'll just add to this query. And before the order by, let's go ahead and add a clause that says
where. Is that it? Or before? You said, okay, so we're ordering at the end. That makes sense. So select where, right?
Yep. And I think it would be name, if that's what we called it in the database. So we're name. And then the SQL syntax for this is I like, and it means is like. And the next thing we want to do is right here, we want to insert the value of that text input. And so we're going to use double curly braces. That's how we reference the component. And we're going to say text input one dot value.
So let me just read this back to people as I understand it, and you'll tell me if I'm correct. I'm saying select everything, right? So all fields, right, from the expenses table that we've connected to this query, where is like, where, hey, Lisa, welcome. Long time no see. I think you'll like this one. This is a little developer-y, so this is for you. Where name, that's the name of my field, is like, so that's like maybe triple equal, I guess, right? Or contains, maybe, is for folks who are maybe a little more like JavaScript, contains. And then we're inputting whatever is written here. And then finally order by ID. You can also like then by amount, whatever, like that would work.
And one sneaky addition that we'll do here is that right now we want to add some wildcards essentially. So if you go within the double curlies before text input one, but within those double curlies, and then just single quote percentage sign. Yep. And so, sorry, my screen's blurry, so I can't see, but the single quote should be.
I can copy paste it to you in the chat if you can't see it. I made it a little larger for folks. So should I do single quote percentage sign. And,
Yep, and then yep, exactly, and then plus we're gonna combine this with text input one value, and then do that on the other side of
got
text
it.
input one value as well.
Got it. Okay, so we're saying it could have something before, it could also have something after. That's okay with us as long as there's something that text input is somewhere there, right? That's what I'm hearing from you, and that's the way you would structure that query.
Yeah, and with this little bit of SQL, you can build 95% of the
Mhm.
apps out there. So this is really all the SQL that you need to know is what you're
So
seeing right here. And you're gonna have to save and run before this takes
okay, so
effect.
now it's saying, okay, is there something? And then if I write AR, it's running, and then it filters those expenses. So I actually I'm quite impressed. So we're gonna do a quick confetti because I'm impressed with myself. So
I'm
yeah,
impressed too.
well, thank God you're here because it would have been different. Actually, a good question from Lisa is, what are the limitations on the Retool hosted database in terms of record volume and field numbers? Already trying to push the limits is Lisa.
I think it's a great question. So a little bit about Retool DB. We're actually launching that in
Okay,
August. So I gave you a sneak peek at a feature that actually hasn't been released yet. Essentially, I think if you're operating in within 100,000 records to even a million records with like 10 columns to even 100 columns,
okay,
you should be fine. Once you start getting outside of that, you might be pushing the limits a little bit, and we can definitely uh, work something out. If you have like a company that needs to do something specific, we can work something out. But the nice thing about this is it's going to be part of our free
hmm,
plan. So you don't even need to you sign up for our free plan and use Retool DB and use Retool, and um, that's our goal. Is we want everyone to be able to come in and use Retool.
fantastic. So Lisa, we trust you to go push the limits once it's publicly available. And I imagine if folks aren't using Retool DB, they could use whatever DB they already used, but everything that they're seeing would be essentially the same, right?
That's exactly right. It's data agnostic. So whatever database you have, come to Retool and use
Okay,
it.
cool. So we now have a search. How? Let's say we want to do a second one where we're filtering on approve. I imagine it's like similar, where we would have an input, like a binary input or a
Yeah, and I
toggle,
think in this case it would be like a
radio,
radio toggle button or
radio
radio. Yep.
group. No.
Drag that one on and let's see what it looks like. Yeah, so we could just do
Okay.
true false here, and you could delete option 3.
There. Folks are excited about the Retool DB. I would say unapproved.
Yeah.
Unapproved is probably not the right word. So what we want is that when this is clicked, can I unradio it? No, I can't. Okay, so let's add a
So
second one.
yep,
Right? Does that make sense?
absolutely. That's what I was gonna say.
How do I go about adding a second? I was there a moment ago because now I'm like in the.
Yep. So on the right hand side, there's a add next to
Oh,
options.
right.
There's a
Okay.
blue.
So
Yep.
would be um
And one small thing here is that if you click back, if you can click open the approved
yeah.
again, and I'll show you one thing. So the value, we actually want the value in this case to be true, and then the label to be approved.
Okay, so
Um,
value to be
so
true, and then the label is approved. Got it. That makes sense. So when
yep.
this is true, and same thing for unapproved. Okay, so this is false.
False.
No, sorry. The value is false, but there's no label yet, so that we want unapproved. Right. Okay. And then we
Yep.
need to connect this to a query that will filter the database, and that means my heart rate is going up because we're going to write some SQL.
Oh, it's okay. It's just one more
Okay.
where clause. And one thing that's nice about in my previous life, I was running a bunch of SQL, and one thing that made my life nice was each where clause I try to
Right.
add on a new line. So you can actually, there you go. And then let's add another where clause, and it's going to be and.
So and before,
Um,
or like, yeah, I remember there was like people were very finicky about where to put the and, but let's put it here and where. Okay.
that's correct. You just don't need the
Oh,
where.
it's
It's
just
just
and. Okay,
this.
got it, got it, got it.
Perfect. And then we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to do, in this case, I think the
Approve,
column
yeah,
is called approve.
approve. I like. Is it would be I like? Yeah, because it's true or false. No,
Could be
equal.
equal
Yes,
in this
exactly.
case.
Equals. And then radio group one.
D-
So
Yep, dot value.
okay, got it. And that's where okay, so that's why we did the value. Okay, I forgot the curly braces. There we go. You're making me less stressed out about SQL. I think I could. This is good. I have very bad. I used to be an actuarial analyst, and I would have to write SAS, which is like terrible SQL, and then I started writing SQL, and then people were just like so hardcore about it and their structure, and I was like, I hate this. Now I stream. That's why I quit that job, and now I do this. So, okay. Now, go ahead.
One thing is I think there might be one thing we need to change. So if you hover over the double curlies, the radio group one dot value, hover over the second, the trailing pair of double
Here.
curlies, and then yep, and so we'll see perfect, and then change the label and make sure it says true when we change
Yeah,
the
I
label.
think we're good. Cool.
So go ahead and save and run and see what we get. Okay, I think the caveat here is that true and false are
okay.
lowercase.
Good, good. Okay. Okay, so here we're saying, oh, there's also spaces before it for some reason. So Boolean. Okay, cool. So it understood that that's what I wanted. So this one is false. And then this one is true. Boolean, that is correct. Okay, so.
And then actually let's change the equals to just an equal sign.
Like that.
And try save and run.
Fantastic.
There we go.
Okay, I think we get another confetti for that one. Every time I write SQL, we do confetti. Okay, so now I can search, right? So I can say show me my approved expenses. I might not have any. I have unapproved. There we go. So now I think the final step here is to, okay, well, how do we create a button, somewhere where I can say, okay, approve this expense, or, send an email that says, hey, why are you expense? Maybe let's just do the approval part. I think that's easy. So how we would, or easier anyway, how do we go ahead and add a button that approves this expense?
So first part is exactly what you said. Let's drag a button onto the canvas.
So create button. There are multiple. There's action, link, toggle, drop down, button group.
I think the first one. Yep, top left. Exactly.
Okay, and then I want it at the top of the at the top of the table, within the table? Should we go into here?
Let's keep it, I think, maybe at the top of the table. And then if you drag it up, we can drag both the table and the button up. If you select them both, then you can use your arrow keys even. Sometimes that's faster for me. And
okay,
there you go. And then maybe we want the button to say approve, so we know what it does.
Fantastic.
And last step is what we want to have happen here is you click the button and we want our database to update. So if you guessed that would involve a query, then you're correct, because we need to write a query to do that. So and this one, no SQL. This can be entirely in the GUI mode.
So this would be, okay, so there is event handlers. So I'm going to go ahead and write the query and then connect the query. So I'm still in pull expense. No, I'm adding a new one.
Yep.
And then this is going to be resource query. GUI mode. See, I'm getting there. We're going to go into our expenses table, select an action. We're going to update an existing record.
Now you need to filter by the ID. So, yep, change this to ID. That's right. And then here, we're going to take the ID of that selected row. And the way to do that is double curlies, table 1. dot selected row.
Okay, this makes sense to me. This is not so we're essentially that's like a I guess a method that you guys have, right? To kind of say that this is the current row that I'm looking at. And we're filtering to say that is the record we need to update in our DB. Is method the right word? I think method is the right word. Okay.
It's the right word. Yeah, absolutely. And so that's correct. And so if we just finish that one off, it's almost done. But basically, a table one dot selected row. Right now, it reads default selected row, so it's
Oh,
just
okay. Sorry.
selected
Selected
row.
row.
And you can actually use tab if you
Okay.
want to autocomplete, and then dot data
Oh,
dot
right.
ID.
Okay. So that is right. So we're saying, okay, let me read this out in English. We're saying go to table one, look at the selected row, match in that table where the data is equal to the ID, because that's the value we're passing through. We're saying, look at the selected row, take this ID, go to the query, select, that matching ID, and then that is what we want to filter on. Cool.
You got it. Absolutely. And then the final thing is we want to change that approved column. So you can select the approved column
Change
there.
set, yeah. So approve is equal to true.
And there you go.
Cool. So let me save this. I need to connect it to the button though.
Yep.
Add action control query. This is it. Yeah, control query. The query I want is let me rename this to approve expense. Man, I feel like a developer suddenly. This is like just hard enough, right? Where I feel proud, but it's not like annoying that I don't need to like run. There's no setup, which is fun.
Yeah. Not to make it boring, but that is our goal. Like that, we want everyone to be a software engineer, even if you don't know how to write JavaScript, even if you don't know how to write SQL. We want everyone to be able to build software.
Well, I appreciate that as a non-developer. I'm internally grateful for that. Okay, cool. So we can do this. So now I think let's remove the filter and let's just start like approving. Okay, so I'm here. That was maybe I'm missing something.
There's one more thing. So after we approve, make that change, we need to refresh
Okay.
the table. And the way to do that is if you load the queries again, scroll down on approve expense. And do you see event handlers for approve
Success.
expense? Yep. And we want to trigger the pull expenses. So after we approve the expenses, we want to repull.
Okay, so we want to control query, go to pull expenses, and trigger. So this is almost like what happens after, right? So on success, go ahead and run this existing query. Okay, that's really smart actually. That's like for folks who are Zapier users, that actually feels very intuitive, right? So actually, what's going to happen here is that it should leave our table once we're done here. So if I come here and I click approve, should we go into preview mode, or how confident are you?
Let's stay here in case we need to debug, but
yeah, okay.
Give it a
try. So approve. Nice. Woo. Good job. Okay, let's preview it. Okay, let's just do a few here. Okay, I'm approving this one. Nice. Where's pennies? Yeah, gift for Aaron. Absolutely approved. Boom. New chair. Sally, I'm sorry. Probably not going to be approved. I should have like a disapprove, approve. Okay, one last confetti, and then we got some questions. So congratulations to us. We built an app. We built 2 apps, actually. Quite surprised. Good job to us.
Yeah, well done. That was fun.
Okay, we've got about like 6 minutes for questions. Yeah, Lisa, I wrote SQL today. We built an app. This is great. This is the most fun I've had in a while. So, okay, so Lisa asks, I have no idea what this is. So, any plan to add the Microsoft Graph API resource for those who are using Excel or Microsoft Suite? She also mentioned that she's ducking after that question and apologizing for making you support legacy tools like that.
No, not at all. Retool's here really to support whatever data store you have. So the way that you could connect to Microsoft Graph API today is they have a REST API that you can use to interact with that software and that database. And so you can actually create a REST API resource and use that to pull and update from Microsoft Graph API. So you can actually do that today in Retool, interact with the Graph API. And if you run into any issues, our support team is here to help. So just reach out to the support team.
Fantastic. Cool. Well, let us know, folks, if there are any questions. Personally, I have a few ideas of what I might use Retool for. I have quite a few Airtable databases I would love to build. Uh, uh, um, you know, some more complex, almost interfaces on top of it. It almost has that ability to, supercharge. Or maybe I have like 3 databases, right, that I'm pulling in from. So Lisa has so many ideas of what she can use Retool for. So that's fantastic. I guess, Ben, as we're waiting for questions, if folks have them, where should people go from here to like either learn about Retool or talk to you? Like, what is a good next step to go from here?
Yeah, I think the best way to learn Retool is by building, and I think it's the most fun way to learn Retool as well. So, we have a free tool plan, so you can use Retool without paying any money. If you get on our website and you click sign up, it's going to create an instance for you, and you can start using Retool and just select the free plan and build away. So I would say just get in there and start building, and then reach out to support if you run into any
Fantastic. Yeah.
questions.
So Trip says, I've had fun writing SQL. Luckily, I've had an expert helping me write the SQL because maybe, by myself, I would pull out some hair trying to do that. Well, with that said, Ben, huge thanks for you joining us today. I truly hope people will be inspired to build, some scalable internal applications. And huge thanks to you for joining us today.
Thank you, Aaron. It was a ton of fun. Thanks for having
All
me
right.
on.
Well, thanks so much, Ben. And we'll be back in probably 3 weeks. I might take a couple weeks off after this, but we'll be back in 3 weeks with Alex talking about fetching live data into Webflow in 3 weeks, which will be part 2. So with that, Ben, thanks again for coming. Thanks everyone for joining, and I will see you in a couple of weeks, everyone. Bye, Penny. Bye, Colleen. Bye, Trip. Thanks all so much for joining, and I'll see you all soon. Bye, everyone.